The Star Trek panel, the Star Trek Expanding Universe, is beginning right now. We're going to go ahead and give you our roundtable roundup on what's coming up in the next few seasons of all the different shows, and so that you can. We're going to try to avoid any spoilers, but give you an idea of what's coming up that you probably will enjoy. Just to introduce myself, I'm Max Trio. I'm a founding member of the USS Zavala, which is a chapter of Starfleet International, the original Star Trek fan association, which truly is international. We're part of Region 3, which is Texas and Louisiana, and we're the chapter based in Houston, Galveston, the Metroplex area. And welcome. Good to see you this morning. Now, currently there are 7 new Star Trek projects in the works. 3 streaming TV series, that's Discover, Picard, and Strange New Worlds. 2 animated streaming TV series, that's Lower Decks, which is very much for adults, as in Adult Swim, and Prodigy, which actually is co-sponsored with Nickelodeon, and is pretty much for young teens, or younger teens, and the grade school crowd. There are 2 other projects in the works, which right now, because of COVID, are really on hold, and there's nothing new. That's going to be Section 31. If you love Michelle Yeoh and Everything Everywhere All at Once, before that she was Philippa Georgiou, the Mirror Empress in Discovery, and they were hoping to spin off a Star Trek show with her, and with her newfound fame and all, that might get delayed even more. So, now the first one we'll talk about is Star Trek Discovery. That is not going to begin, apparently, based on all the chatter I hear, it is not going to begin until 2024. According to Jonathan Frakes, who actually has been directing, who's from Next Generation, has actually been directing a lot of different Star Trek episodes of all the different streaming series. They are going to end Discovery with season 5, and they've already filmed part of the finale, and they're actually filming more to add on to the finale in order to wrap up the entire show. So they've already spun off Strange New Worlds from Discovery, and they had talked about spinning off Section 31 from Discovery as well. I would not be surprised if they didn't spin off another show, but there's no word on that right now. Star Trek Picard, finally, there's one of the Star Trek series is back and streaming. I've had a chance to watch the first, and now, unfortunately, it's also going to be the last season of that show. Though there's some interesting speculation with Jerry Ryan back as 7 of 9 that they will spin off a show with her, which I think a lot of people would like to see. Picard is. I've actually only seen the very first episode of this season, but it's really strong, more so than the other 2 seasons. It looks like they're going to have a great 3rd season, if that's what they're going to end on. Now, there's also some talk that, when the original Star Trek ended, they talked about doing movies. When Next Generation ended, they did movies. Didn't do that for Deep Space Nine or Voyager, but there is talk of Picard spinning off movies after the end of this season and the wrap up of Picard, the series. So we might end up seeing Picard in the movies. Now they're getting together. I don't want to spoil this, but it's been out on the internet quite a bit. If you've seen the pictures of Worf with his white hair and white beard, and rumors that he's become a pacifist. From one of the trailers I just watched, well, he might be a pacifist, but he does still believe in self-defense. So they're going to kind of get the crew back together. And the overall theme of that is a rescue mission to save Dr. Crusher. And it goes, and I believe it's kind of goes forward from there. And there's a new character being added that I'm not going to spoil it, but when you first see him, you may see a resemblance to one of the other characters when they were very, very, very young. And if you're like a die-hard Trek fan,
also,
you probably will.
Voice of the
Strange New World. I love it. It's the one series that everybody has enjoyed from the very beginning. It was great as part of the Strange New World stories were great. Or Captain Pike stories in Discovery were great. Everybody really enjoyed them, and it really gives the flavor of the old Star Trek series with better visuals and better production values and good characters. It's the same kind of good characters as the original series. I am not hearing when they're going to come back. I think they're having the same problems as everybody because of COVID. So I fully expected them to be opening like one series a month, starting in January with Picard, and then maybe Lower Decks, and then maybe Strange New Worlds. But that looks like that's not going to happen until maybe 2024. So and they ended up with they were on a cliffhanger with number one's character, and that'll be resolved in the next episode. But it's going to be kind of episodic like the original Star Trek was, with a different planet every week, a different alien. Well, I don't know about different alien chicks. Captain Pike's he's not a bad boy like Kirk. But you know, a new culture too every week. Now, Section 31, I mentioned Michelle Yeoh. Still no word about that. She really blew up, and I fully expect she'll get an Oscar. And the supporting actor, Kelly Shu, will probably get she did a really great job in the movie too. I had to watch it twice to kind of get a feel for all the stuff that's kind of in that movie. But we may see Section 31 down the line. Maybe not with Michelle Yeoh, but no telling. Lower Decks. Okay, during season 4, there's going to be a crossover between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. Of all things, Tawny Newsome, Jack Quaid, and I think one other actor are going to be live-action characters in Strange New Worlds. So the Cerritos and the Enterprise are going to meet up somehow. Maybe it's kind of a trials and tribulations type episode. And I really enjoy it. It's not for kids, even though it's animated. It's definitely very adult, but it's hilarious and it's well written. It's very Star Trek. I particularly recommend the episode where they land on the planet and they find out that Starfleet has already been there, and in a big way. And I think it's kind of a heartbreaking episode as well. But it is really good, and if they keep the level of writing like that, I think they'll be able to go on for a fairly long time. And I love the actors too. They make the characters come to life. Prodigy. I think Prodigy and Lower Decks are going to face the same problem that a lot of productions, animated productions are because of COVID. All of a sudden it's not that there's not enough like computer processing time available. There aren't enough computer animators available. The more, stuff like Quantumania, the DC universe, the Marvel universe are turning out movies on a really kind of an accelerated basis compared to what it was like even before COVID. And so there's not enough people to actually do the work, and that's going to delay it. Typically, Prodigy is generally computer generated. I can't remember what the I stands for. Those kinds of projects take like 2 years ahead. That's why there's the Simpson paradox, where Matt Groening, who was one of the writers, I guess, for Simpsons, he's the original creator, would slip in things that he thought would probably never happen in the world into the Simpsons storylines, and then Donald Trump was elected. And that was one of the things that he predicted it as to be honest, as a joke, not knowing that it would actually happen. And a couple of other things he's actually ended up predicting as well. Not just that. So with like Prodigy, you can see where Prodigy will take a while. So we may not be seeing it or Lower Decks until like 2024 as well. So we have to settle for Picard for right now. And then if you haven't seen the other season, you'll be able to catch up. Now, the thing about Prodigy is that even though it's delayed, it was a 20-episode series or season. So they were able to get out the first 10, but then you had to wait, and the second 10 came out. Now, it is a shorter episode. It's like 25 minutes, 30 minutes. So you end up really getting like 10 episodes total. But when it comes back, I think it'll also be another 20 episode season. So they ended on a pretty good stop on their finale. Star Trek the movie. Oh my God, all kinds of stuff on it. Is Simon Pegg going to help write it, or Edgar Wright? Who's going to come up with a script? Is Chris Pine going to be doing it? Well, he's got Dungeons and Dragons coming up. He had Don't Worry Darling, which was the critics liked. I'm not sure about the audiences. So he's keeping busy. Will he make time? Hard to say. So that might kill it. I think Chris Hemsworth was talking about his coming back. He played George Kirk in the very first reboot movie. They were talking about doing a kind of a grandfather's paradox where Kirk has a chance to meet his father, or tries to go back in time and maybe save his father. And I'm not a big fan of that. Well, I was never a big fan of time travel as far as the Trek stories go. And the reboot movie was great. The time travel part of it really wasn't. So far, they've gone through 4 directors, 3 different scripts. I actually probably didn't update that correctly. It's probably about 5 scripts. Now, one of them was by Nicholas Meyer. He's the one who wrote Wrath of Khan, and also The Search for Spock, and The Undiscovered Country, which are like people's top 3 movies. He did like, and even before that, it was the 7% Solution, where he really brought back Sherlock Holmes as a character in the movie. He's just a good writer. There's a great book called A View from the Bridge that he wrote about making the Star Trek film, which if you have like relatives who are interested in filmmaking, I would buy a copy of that book and give it to them. Now, one of the scripts is by apparently Quentin Tarantino is a big fan. I have an episode of CSI Vegas from like season 8 or so that I love, and I've showed it. I haven't showed it like I'd like to. It's an episode where two of the lab rats, Wallace and where's Ruby? I can't remember their problem now. They're dressed up for Space Quest, and at the con, and a murder occurs. In fact, the person who gets killed is the director of a new Star Trek-like movie, who has written kind of a Quentin Tarantino regular type script, rewriting the series and making it a lot darker and a lot bloodier. But it's a fun episode. It's got a lot of in jokes about Star Trek and about Star Trek fans in particular that I think people will get. And it's an interesting murder mystery too, on top of that. So, if you're a reader, if you like, especially if you like ebooks, that's okay. That's okay. That's what streaming's for. There are a series of books that kind of continue where the series ended. So after Next Generation finished up, we have Riker and Troy are like the captain and first officer of the USS Titan. We've seen the Titan return in Picard. It showed up, actually was in the Next Generation. But it's also part of Picard as well. The USS Aventine, we have Ezri Dax and Julian Bashir from Deep Space Nine. He's her ship's medic. She's the captain with all those symbiont lives behind her. As young as she lives, she's probably the most experienced captain in the whole of Starfleet. USS Stargazer, have you ever wondered what Picard was like before he was Picard? You know, before he was the captain, before he was the admiral. They've got a series of those with a different crew. Kind of like there are a fair number of stories with Kirk. When Kirk was a young child, when he was a teenager, when he was serving on these other ships like the Yorktown, I think. Those are all peppered through the different Star Trek novels. And there's like series, a couple of quadrologies and trilogies, Typhon Pact, Hidden Frontier. There's one for the Klingon fans, the IKS Gorkon, you know, to boldly go, to plant the Imperial flag, to conquer new worlds in the name of the Emperor. You know, subjugate new cultures and new alien races. And Starfleet Academy for the young adults and for the young teens and even the crew teens a little bit. You know, what was it like when Kirk was going through basically high school and college? And Worf, you know, we see Worf's parents, the Rogenkos, but here's Worf. We see Worf at the Academy trying to deal with his culture there as well. And being the odd man out, to be honest. Oh, if you like romance novels, there actually is a series, and I don't think it's Hidden Frontier. It's the USS Excalibur with Captain Calhoun Mackenzie. And it's like kryptonite to me. I won't read it. But if you got like a friend who loves like Harlequin romance, I'll get a couple of them for you next time I go by half price and see if you like them. They're really, you got it, Julie. They are. It's like, how can I phrase this? You know, it's like a bodice ripper in outer space. So, the captain, his name is Mackenzie Calhoun, but literally he's like was like a prince who was stolen away from his planet and adopted out. Give you a break. Now, I want to give a big plug here, especially since it's going to be a while before the series come back. When the original series finished, that didn't mean that people quit making Star Trek films. It just meant they quit making them for money. I highly recommend Star Trek Continues. Rick Mignogna was here Friday, and he was being interviewed. Now, he's known for his voice acting now in anime, but he actually played Captain Kirk in the Star Trek Continues, part of those episodes. Another actor named James Cawley, who's famous as an Elvis impersonator, played Kirk in the early part of the series. There's like 11 episodes, very much like the original Trek. It's funny because they created a set for all their filming. They actually do some of their outdoor sets are in the Ticonderoga, New York area. So they're out in the woods right there near the city. But the sets that are set in the ship look real as opposed to the way they look if you go to like the original series, they don't quite look real. But in Star Trek Continues, they look exactly like the original sets, and they do look real. They're great. The acting's pretty good. The writing is really good. They have this one, Come Not Between the Dragons, with a social message like a lot of Star Trek had. And they do some great creature special effects in it. They actually premiered it at Space City Con a number of years ago now. But it's all available free out on the internet. Check YouTube. Look up Star Trek Continues. Now, Star Trek Renegades, Star Trek Renegades for Queen, and Omanara. Those are like independent, even though they're like independent films. Renegades, I describe, my elevator pitch for it is Dirty Dozen in outer space. It's a captain of a rogue ship being handled by Admiral, oh my goodness, Walter Koenig's character. Admiral Chekhov is their handler as part of Starfleet intelligence. And the captain of that particular ship is Khan's daughter. And I can't remember her name right after that. And it's a great episode. The special effects aren't super, but they're great. The writing's good, the acting's pretty good too. It's a good story. And then they followed that up with a sequel, Renegades for Queen. But actually, another thing about Renegades is that a number of Star Trek actors like Tim Ross, Tuvok, is one of the directors and producers. Nichelle Nichols is involved. Walter Koenig, a couple of other ones. I can't remember right off the bat. Some of the actors, Gary Graham is back. He played Sula. He played one of the Vulcans actually in Enterprise, and he plays a shape-shifting alien in this story, one of the crew members. They're working on a third movie, which is a prequel, and stars Nichelle Nichols, but she's not playing Lieutenant Uhuru. She's actually playing a crime boss, an interstellar criminal syndicate boss named Omanara. So this other actress who's actually played her as a younger version of herself plays Omanara as a young woman, Nichelle Nichols plays her as an older woman, I guess talking about the past, the flashback. And I'm not sure when that's coming out. I've got some money on that, so I'm just waiting to know when I get my DVD. There's some great figurines that they made as a fundraiser with Nichelle, using Nichelle Nichols as the model. Very mirror, and they sold like hotcakes. And this is the very last time you'll see her on film. If you get a chance, watch Woman in Motion. It's streaming and on DVD. It's basically a documentary of her life and all the things, basically what she did for NASA as a recruiting officer, getting more minorities, more women, younger people involved in the NASA program, willing to put in their name as candidates for the astronaut corps. And she did a great job. Star Trek of Gods and Men. It's got a lot of actors in it. Nichelle Nichols is in it as Uhuru, with her Vulcan husband, who was Stan from the Amok Time series, or the Amok Time episode. Her marriage to him is the start of the movie. Highly recommended. It's a full-length feature. It's like an hour and a half. And it brings together two villains from Star Trek, Charlie X and Gary. Do you remember Gary's last name, Lucy? Okay. The very first episode, the very first regular episode of Star Trek. Gary, who's the captain's friend, who becomes godlike. He reappears, and Charlie X reappears. And there's a bit of time travel going on too. And then there's then Axanar, which is a big favorite of mine. Look for Prelude to Axanar, Axanar on YouTube. And it's just a short. It's like a short History Channel featurette, and then eventually that's going to be. It was meant as a kind of a test deal. Eventually it's going to be an hour and a half to 2 hour movie in the old style of Star Trek. And they brought back an old character, Garth of Izar, from the original series before he goes crazy and tries to kill her. Because we'll have our PowerPoint or our slides available if y'all want us to. If you sign up over at our booth at the far back, you can't miss it. Look for the transporter room. We'll send you. I'll make sure they put in a copy of our PowerPoint or our slides, whichever one turns out to be smaller online. Oh, and there actually is another. There's a fan generated CGI 2 films. They're both the Aurora Trek. It's a 2-person crew on a commercial ship. The first episode was just Aurora Trek. The second one was Mud in Your Eye, as in Harry Mud. And they're both and the captain and the first mate are both female. They're hot. I gotta give them credit. The guy who put it together, though, his wife does the voice, so I presume he actually modeled the captain on her. Fan fiction, AO3.org. I've written some Star Trek fan fiction for our newsletters. She's given me an assignment. I've got a story that was meant for one of our summits to publish it in, but couldn't finish it off. If you want to see stuff, if you have an interest in Star Trek, you can go to Archive of Our Own, AO3.org, and look through the tags. And you'll see tags for Star Trek, for Klingons, for Kirk. be careful about the stuff that says slash. That's erotic fiction about Star Trek. And I do mean erotic and homoerotic, but there's a lot of fan fiction out there. Just be careful and be aware. Most people put age restrictions or they'll put warnings about what you might encounter there. And this is us. This is what we got going on. We're here at Comic Conroe. We'll be at Comic Palooza Memorial Day weekend at the George R. Brown. Oh, I forgot. What's the date? April 15th and 16th. That'll be a Saturday and Sunday. We'll be out at Traders Village, Eldridge Parkway, and 290. We'll be back in the covered pavilion area near the bar, near the big bar, the margarita machine bar. And then our ship's anniversary, we've been around since 2011. That'll come. That's actually we picked the day that we can be commissioned, and we picked Texas Navy Day, which is September. That year it was September 16th on a Saturday. We actually joined a ceremony on the battleship Texas commemorating the day, and that was a lot of fun. The battleship Texas was one of our interests that we kept up. And then this year, I think it'll be a Saturday again. Every other year, we host all the other chapters within Texas, Louisiana, our Region 3, at Space Center Houston. We've kind of changed it up a little bit the last couple of years because of COVID, because everybody's been to Space Center Houston a couple times, and go more than a few times during the regular year. So we'll be announcing plans on our Facebook page. But that's also in time with the anniversary of the start of the Star Trek series, which is like September 6th. We'll be doing something for Star Trek Day, which is kind of an international thing now, I guess. Kind of a way to bring Star Trek back after COVID. September the 8th. And then here's some other Star Trek events. You probably can't see it very well. Every year in August, there's a huge convention in Las Vegas. I think the Rio Hotel has it back. Over in Europe, there's a huge park that Paramount owns, an amusement park in Dortmund, Germany. That's where the biggest Star Trek convention is. Star Trek The Cruise, talk to Lucy. She's been on it. She loves it. If she's busy talking to somebody else, talk to Steve. He's been on it too. Shore Leave and Farpoint. There actually is a Star Trek group in Maryland, outside of Baltimore and very close to Washington, D.C. They put on 2 conventions a year. One is Farpoint, which is based on the original Next Generation episode. It's like Comic Conroe, a little bit bigger and a lot more panels. And that's around Valentine's Day. Shore Leave was in August. This year it's going to be around July 4th. And it's more multi-fandom, less Star Trek. At the same place, probably about the same size. The last one, and this one I've heard pretty good things about. Ticonderoga. It's Ticonderoga, New York. It's in the city itself. It's a converted grocery store that has all the sound stages inside it that they use for Star Trek Continues and continue to use for Star Trek fan films, like Starship Farragut, I think Starship Exeter filmed there as well. They have films out on YouTube like the Tresorian Connection, and I can't remember what else. There's actually 2 films out there. one with George Takei, All the Time in the World, and then one with Walter Koenig as Chekhov. And that one is To Serve Them All My Days. Those are both really good, kind of original series flavored films that were filmed at that same place. If you're a gamer, play StarTrekOnline.com. New missions, new characters all the time. New backstory, who we are, people who appreciate Star Trek. What do? We get together to talk Trek, cosplay, enjoy science and science fiction. What our mission is, make a better future starting now. You know, a lot of us, we need that future to come a little bit quicker than it is. And here's how to contact us. Our website, just swing by our table. We have cards and brochures. We have cards for the ship. We have brochures for Starfleet International. Grab a photo in our. We actually have a transporter room set up. Come by, take a snap. If you don't have a camera with you, we'll take a picture for you and paste it on our Facebook page. And enjoy the rest of the con and live long and prosper in transmission. Hey, if you got any questions?